Hello guys, and welcome back to Creepypastas. I apologize for how long you guys have had to wait for this delicious and all, but I hope it's worth the wait, and I hope you guys enjoy it. New stories are coming within the week, and I can't really think of anything else to say. Let's start off with the first story we have here. This first story is called Risha Sentai to Kyuger, the Lost DVD. And this is definitely a Creepypasta. It's very bizarre. It has all the cliches you expect. It has 666, it has killing and gore and all that kind of crap. It's pretty much the best kind of Creepypasta you can find, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Also, that evil stick thing makes a cameo for some reason. Yeah, I'm not sure why. I was a big fan of Super Sentai, the Japanese show, whose seasons get adapted into an American version called Power Rangers. Now after seeing this DVD, I don't think I can ever watch the show again. It was a sunny day, and I walked into the video shop where I saw a particular DVD on one of the shelves. It was a red cover with the words, Risha Sentai to Kyuger, Lost DVD. Underneath, it said Volume 666. The picture also on the cover had the image from the evil stick, that satanic girl slaying her arm. I was disturbed, but I wanted to get the DVD so I could examine it. I bought it, but the video store owner warned me that the DVD had some demonic spirits contained, and if the DVD is left out of its cover for a long time, the owner of the DVD will get possessed. I gulped and left. When I went home, I put in the DVD. White text faded in, telling me that my volume must be turned up full bore. It faded out. A menu came up with the episode. I selected the episode, and it began. A shot of the rainbow line riding on the tracks was shown as always. But on the train, everyone was sitting there depressed for 3 minutes. Then they started crying, and it got louder and more realistic. Then they were almost coughing out blood. But then, Wright starts slitting his throat. He falls over. Everyone else, including Ticket, Conductor, and Reagan, they slit their throats, and they were dead. Their bodies are shown with blood gushing out of them for like 5 minutes. And then that image from the evil stick zoomed in with really loud hissing noise. I was scared out of my wits. I didn't know what to do. I tried turning it off, but a warning message came up saying, unable to shut down, error 666. I almost had a heart attack. The noise was getting louder and louder and louder. And then, my laptop exploded. It was in flames. The flames were red though. I somehow heard a voice saying, "Kill, kill, will kill you." I yelled out, "Fuck you. That DVD is possessed." So, if you see that DVD somewhere, do not touch it. You will be possessed by Satan and fatally suffer eternity in hell. Alright, now we're on to SpongeBob Lost Episode, SpongeBob's Fresh Start, and, well, I can't tell you anything in this story. I'd be completely giving it away if I did. But let's just say it kind of crosses over with another story, and by the end, you'll want to kill yourself. Long story short, this is one of the funniest Creepypastas I've ever seen online, and by the end, I think you'll agree with me. Well, I know you won't believe this, but me and about 5,000 other people all work at this one Nickelodeon studio. And we got to watch episodes before they were released, because somehow, whenever I get to watch them or not, invalidate what my actual job is. So anyway, we got to watch a new one. The title card said, SpongeBob's Fresh Start, and it was white text on a black background. When the episode started, it showed SpongeBob was at his parents' house. He then said, maybe I should play a sport. So we went to a basketball court in Bikini Bottom. He was shooting some hoops when a gang came in. Me and some of the other interns thought this was a little bit of an adult theme for SpongeBob, but we just continued watching. The gang started to cause trouble, and SpongeBob got into a fist fight. Afterwards, he went home and told his mother. but his mother looked scared. She said,
"You're moving with my auntie and uncle in Bel Air."
SpongeBob, looking confused, begged to stay, but she just packed up his stuff and sent him on his way. We didn't prior learn of this new plot, and it confused most of us. Then he walked outside and called for a taxi. When it arrived, there were fuzzy dice in the mirror, and the license plate said fresh. If anything, this cab was rare. SpongeBob said, "Nah, whatever, you're home to Bel Air." At about 7 or 8, he was finally there to sit on his throne as the Prince of Bel Air. Then we all committed pack suicide by choking ourselves with bubblegum and glowing each other's eyes out with toothbrushes. The end. So this is a story that I've been getting a lot of credit for. But most people call it a really good story. I think it's okay, but I do see why they like it. It does have all the technicals about how the game works, and it's left to the viewer about what people saw in the last level if they were able to actually play it and stuff. It's left to your imagination what happened there and what could make them suffer under post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, or whatever you want to call it. And I kind of like the idea of where it was going, because most creepypasta stories always tell you, oh, well, I looked on this image and it showed a lot of blood and gore, but this one leaves it up in the air about what it actually is. Which is a pretty good idea, given what the story is about. Does anyone remember an old PC game from the early 1990s called Mr. Mix? It's mainly a typing game, similar to Mario Teaches Typing, where you have to type words into a box to make a chef, the tutorial Mr. Mix, put ingredients into a bowl. Unlike most typing games, however, this game is notorious for having an insane difficulty curve. The game has a words per minute requirement for each level, being as low as 10 on level 1 and as high as 85 on the third. By level 5, the requirement reaches over 500, effectively making it impossible to proceed any further. One of the main things that people noticed about this game immediately was the background music. The music on the first level was an unsettling pattern of growls that got progressively louder as the level went on, often causing damage to early computer speakers that were not designed to handle extremely high volumes of sound. The second level had no music at all, and the third had what sounded like an extremely low quality recording of a hairdryer playing in the background. The remaining 2 levels had an extremely loud high-pitched ringing throughout the level that caused severe eardrum damage to those who managed to get that far. Another rather disturbing aspect of the game was the design of Mr. Mix himself. He was a large round-faced overweight man with large beady eyes and red spots on his cheeks. Most children who played the game reported having vivid nightmares of Mr. Mix speaking to them in a quiet, raspy voice and threatening them to keep quiet about something. However, none of them could remember exactly what that was. One psychiatrist who saw many of these children reported being disturbed by the sheer amount of terror on the faces of the children as they recounted the details of the nightmare. Many of the children broke down to tears in the process, begging for the parents to save them. However, no direct relationship to the game itself could be determined by these few cases, as not all children suffered the same adverse effects. For obvious reasons, this game did not sell very well. It remained in relative obscurity until a few years ago, when PC hackers got hold of a ROM of the game and started digging through it. Using memory hacking software, they managed to crack the game's code and bypass the impossible 5th level. What they found, however, was extremely disturbing and caused many of them to quit the expedition altogether. According to the reports these hackers were left behind, the game behaves very strangely if the 5th level is bypassed. The game crashes violently and closes, writing a bunch of files to the user's System32 directory to the point that the RAM was almost completely filled. These files are reportedly pictures of people with horribly deformed faces, appearing to scream in pain and agony with their eyes appearing to be bleeding from the tear ducts and their outer layer of skin torn clean off in multiple places. If the user attempts to delete these files, the computer will violently crash and blue screen, causing permanent irreplaceable damage to the user's hard drive. The hackers found that this was caused by a lone byte in the game's ROM that triggered when the 5th level was completed. After removing this byte, they were able to proceed to the 6th and final level. Unfortunately, all of the original hackers declined to discuss what they saw in the final level. All of them became extremely paranoid and reclusive, refusing to talk about anything related to the game and showing astonishingly extreme symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them ceased to be able to form coherent sentences within a week, and within a month, all of them went missing. All remaining copies of the game were destroyed. To this day, no one knows what was in that game that caused them so much psychological damage. Maybe it's better that way. 2 years after this incident, a man was arrested after trying to kidnap an 8-year-old girl from a grocery store. Through DNA and fingerprint analysis, the man was identified as one of the original hackers who viewed the final level of the game. He was wearing a white chef's hat and had a look of unspeakable malice and insanity on his face. When interrogated, the man would only say one thing. "I'm Mr. Mix." Shut up! Oh boy, now we're diving into Zelda 2, the last level. I actually thought about doing this as like my second or third creepypasta, but just never got around to it for whatever reason. Well, maybe it was a good thing that it wasn't one of my first pastas, because if I did, most likely I would praise it or something, because I think when we start on creepypasta stories, every creepypasta is just real and spooky, no matter how cliche it is. But as time goes on, we realize that pretty much all of them are completely fake and stuff, depending on the story. But yeah, this story is as cliche as you may think it is. There's the blood element, there's somehow a character comes out of the game and kills you. Well, it's kind of more explained in the story. And apparently, this one specific game was made over an Indian burial ground. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense why this one specific game was made there. You'd think it would be like, oh, well, the person who was selling it was living in that area. But no, apparently someone at Nintendo, or whoever makes them in Japan, just said, hey, you know what we want to make it? Over this Indian burial ground that has all this controversy over it. I'm pretty sure this won't backfire in the slightest. Especially if it's made into a creepypasta story. That'll work out fine. So, if you can predict, this story blows. One day, I was exploring eBay for some old NES games to play. Considering all my old ones went missing, I thought one of my favorite games from my childhood, Zelda 2. I looked it up and I only found 2 results. The Legend of Zelda N64 2 game set, OOT and Majora's Mask with game saves, and Zelda 2 NES. You can guess which one I clicked. The NES one because I didn't have an N64 and it was very expensive to buy another one. It was surprisingly 99 cents, and it was a buy right now item, not a billable item. So I bought it, and I played it after a week when it arrived. The cartridge looked weird. It had no label, and it was all golden. Replacing the title with a Sharpie marker, they put this on the front cover with a red Sharpie. So I popped the sucker in and began playing. This person left a save file on there, so I just decided to play it. It started out normally. I roamed Hyrule, entered caves, killed enemies, and so forth. The only glitch was that I could walk through rocks and stuff, so I used that to my advantage. I ran and ran through the rocks until I came across a town which looked like it was on fire at the corner of the map. When I entered, it was a perfect town. No townspeople turned into bats, nothing bad. Everyone in the town strangely told me this: "Leave now." I thought it was some stupid joke, until I walked by a big house and I got pulled into it by a strange looking girl. She said,
Come in, quick!
I then heard screams of pain and digitized splat noises inside the house. He levitated out of the house. The city turned dark suddenly, and all of the houses burst into flames, with an eyeless Link started laughing in a demonic laugh. He then said in a demonic voice with his eyes gushed blood out of the empty stare of his eyes.
Hyrule's done for. Greg and Zelda, along with Hyrule, shall perish by the hands of me!
All of the townspeople surround him, and all of them blew up, and it splattered guts and blood everywhere, Link chanting Ring Around Rosie. Then the game cut to black, and it said, "Run away, Greg! Run!" I looked behind me, and there was a bloody Link behind me, bleeding from his eyes, chanting,
"You are gonna die."
Then he lifted me up and threw me into my glass table. I stood up and he screamed, which launched me into my glass frames of my family members. Glass stuck into my back. I limped away, and he threw me through my back door glass slider, getting cut up by all of that glass. I crawled away, got picked up, and then thrown into my brick wall. I then blacked out and woke up in a hospital. My neighbor called the police due to the loud noises caused at my residence. The police found me nearly dead from internal bleeding and severe injuries. I got into my laptop and I researched the history of this cartridge. I found out that a man who made the cartridge made it at an abandoned warehouse built over an Indian burial ground called the Green Tree Cemetery. I studied the cemetery and I found out that a certain man, a part of the Apache tribe, got captured by a rival tribe, got his eyes cut out with a buffalo horn knife, and left him in the woods to bleed to death. I thought that maybe the Link that I saw might have been that man. He attacked me and nearly killed me. A week later, they put me into casts for my arm and my leg, and I got crutches to go home with. I am never going to touch that cartridge ever again, so I put it back on eBay as a bid. Zelda 2 NES was its name. Now this was an interesting theory pasta that I haven't really thought about doing until this rich list. I think it's okay. I think it is an interesting story about how Angelica came up with the Rugrats and stuff, even though it's obviously not true, but it's an interesting theory about how it could be possible, and I do enjoy where it went and stuff, and explain the characters' backstories and how they may or may not have existed at all, and some characters who actually do exist meld well with the story and whatnot. I can't really think of anything else to say about this one. It's pretty decent. It varies from person to person, of course. The Rugrats really were a figment of Angelica's imagination. Chucky died a long time ago, along with his mother. That's why Chaz is a nervous wreck all the time. Tommy was a stillborn. That's why Stu is constantly in the basement, making toys for the son who never had a chance to live. The DeVilles had an abortion. Angelica couldn't figure out whether it would be a boy or a girl, thus creating the twins. As for All Grown Up, Angelica was a bipolar schizophrenic, who as a teenager became addicted to various narcotics, bringing her back to her childhood, thus creating a world in her mind that she obsessed over. Because of the time lapse between the present and the last time she interacted with her imaginary world, she made them older. Angelica was constantly taking hits of acid, so she would never have to live without creations. To her, her creations were her only company in a judgmental world. Angelica's mom actually died of a heroin overdose. Angelica was schizophrenic and bipolar because she was a crack baby. Additionally, Drew, in his desperation, married a gold-digging whore that Angelica idolized because she fooled herself into thinking it was her real mom. However, she always had a concept of her mom, Cynthia. She used a Barbie doll to mirror her birth mother's image, wearing an unwashed orange dress and jacked up hair, which is why she was so attached to it. Later in life, she followed in her mother's footsteps, dying of overdose at age 13 when All Grown Up was cancelled. The only Rugrat not to be fictional, however, was unborn Tommy's brother, Dill. However, Angelica didn't know the difference between Dill and her creations. Dill didn't follow her commands, and after endless crying and a refusal to disappear like the others did when Angelica was angry with them, she hit him. After she hit him, he screamed a screeching tune, and Stu went in and pulled his niece off of his only child. But it was too late. Dale had a brain hemorrhage, which resulted in a deformation. As he grew up, his damage only became more evident, and by the time he was 9 and all grown up, he lived as an outcast, being ridiculed for his weirdness and retardation. The immense guilt over this is what caused Angelica to start using drugs and to uncreate the Rugrats briefly, until her experience with hallucinogens. Chaz lost his mind after the death of his first wife and was in denial that she was ever a prostitute. On a trip to Paris to find love, Chaz fell in love with a hooker named Kira. Kira once had a daughter named Kimmy, but the baby was torn from her by law due to her cocaine addiction. Upon return to America, Chaz and Kira married and she got her green card. It was a surprisingly happy and romantic story. Kira continually struggled with addiction, but was relatively happy with her new life with Chaz. Susie was Angelica's only friend, who entertained the thought of Angelica's creations because they seemed to make her happy. She later became a psychiatrist and teamed up with Nickelodeon to make the Rugrats. When Angelica died of the overdose, Susie helped arrange her funeral. Because of her addictions and her mental state, Angelica was expelled from society, which led to a break with reality and her eventual death. She spent the last days of her life in the back of the school cafeteria, imagining friends around her and playing with the lives of her creations. Ah, geez, now we got stuck with another one of these stories. I seem to get them every time I make a wish list. I'm not gonna give out names, of course, but it seems to be all written by the same person. I mean, that's just my guess. I'm not sure who it is specifically who wrote this, and I'm not insulting you in any way, because I do recognize that y'all have to start somewhere with story writing and whatnot, but you might be able to understand why this story's on the website that it is. Again, nothing against the writer of the story, but this is a story that desperately needs a rewrite. Do you know about the show Luk and Muk? Then here's a story for you. It was a late night, and I was with my friends for a sleepover, watching the newest episodes for Luk and Muk. After the newest episode, we all went to bed and slept. I woke up at 4 in the morning to see the television was still on. I went over to it, and right when I was about to turn it off, the Luk and Muk theme song played for about 15 seconds before going to stack. But didn't you know that the theme was taken from Fall Out Boys, that they took the song centuries? But anyway, back to the story. After the stack, a title card came up on the screen, and I guess it was another Luk and Muk episode. The title was called The Murder Victims. I was lucky to actually take a picture of it and save it on my computer. The title card looked very real, and the font was not like in the show, and it looked like it was from an 80s type of design. I could see a hand holding a blood-covered knife, and it was dripping on the words. The episode began with Luke texting on his phone, and then panned to Mook doing the usual stuff, making really bad puns. But he looked really tired, but he still sounded happy. Then it cuts to Luke still texting on his phone. Then he gets a call from his friend Dave. Luke puts the phone to his ear and says, "Hello?" But it just cuts to a dark hallway with a person staying at the end of the hall. It then zooms into the person and says in some kind of a deep normal voice and a bit of static in the back of it,
"Do you want me to do it?"
Saying it once, he says it again, but in a more kid-like voice. "Do you want me to do it?" Then it cuts back to Luke, but he's shocked to see a murder scene. The person looked very young, like a teenager. There was a knife cut into his stomach.
He was so young!
Heard from a crying little girl. This was shocking. There was never any blood in this show before. Later that day, Luke was looking out the window, looking terrible as ever. As he walks away, his walking was very choppy and slower. This lasted for over a minute. After a minute of walking, he goes outside and kneels. He screams, "Why do you do this to me?" in an out-of-character voice, more of a depressed voice. Luke is at his job, working hard. His face looked like he saw a ghost. His eyes were bloodshot, and his pupils were really small like a tarsier. It then cuts to another murder scene, but it showed 2 victims. One was a Powerpuff Girl. I think it was Bubbles. But she was alive. She was flat like a pancake. Well, it was a cartoon, so it was okay. But there was a kid with blood all over him, and the camera panned down. I was shaking. His stomach was carved open, and his stomach was cut open. Then it cuts to Muk sitting on his bed. He looked so shocked. He looks at the camera and says, "You wanna know what happened?" He takes the camera and moves it over to Luk. His body was hung on a meat hooker. His eyes were gone, bleeding. Muk carves his arm, saying dead. The episode ends when he looks into the camera and says,
I did it.
Then it goes to stack, and the TV turns off on its own. It was 5 o'clock, and I stayed up all night. This was the last I saw of this episode before it happened. One of my friends was murdered by someone, and I was shocked. Then after that, my other friend committed suicide by hanging himself by a meat hook. Then I saw something on the news. A teenage boy wearing a white shirt, hooded by a black jacket and brown hair. I knew him. Alright, and the last story we have is the Goosebumps Lost Episode Pasta. I have to say, out of all the stories I've done tonight, this is pretty much the best one out of all of them. I mean, it's not a perfect story by any means, but I do like the way it goes, where it's not actually all about, blood and gore like I mentioned in the other stories, or anything cliche like that. Well, until the very end, and I'll explain that in a minute. I like how it's more psychological about how you feel like there's no point in living and how nobody loves you and stuff. Again, it's more psychological, and you don't see that very often in these pastas, especially Lost Episode pastas. At the end, it's of course about the character who goes through like an existential crisis and is like, oh my god, no one loves me, I might as well kill myself, bang. But the rest of the story is pretty good. I like the build-up. For the most part, everything's fleshed out. I wish the beginning was a little bit better instead of just randomly finding a VHS tape of the show if you never had any copies of the show beforehand. Otherwise than that, this is pretty much the best one we got to end this wish list. Goosebumps was one of the highlights of my childhood. I must have read nearly every book and watched a great deal of the episodes. The best thing was why the stories were scary. Most of the stories had monsters, ghosts, and demons, but I loved the ones that really fucked with your brain, like Shocker on Shock Street. Goosebumps was my favorite series of books, even if they kept me up during the night. Last week, I was clearing out my spare room. It was packed full of boxes, books, and old clothes, which was strange seeing as I've only been living in my house 3 months now. I found an old Tupperware box with the word Goosebumps written across it. All my old Goosebumps books were in it. A wave of nostalgia washed over me. I was near tears as I looked at the covers that had scared me shitless as a kid. A lot of the pages were dog-eared, and I found 2 bookmarks and 6 business cards. At the bottom of the box was a VHS tape with Goosebumps Hide and Seek written in blue marker on it. I honestly can't remember owning any of the episodes from the TV show, so it was odd that it was there. I didn't think too much of it at the time, and decided it would bring back a few memories if I watched it. It took me a while to find my video player though, through all the clutter, but after 20 minutes I found it. It started off with R.L. Stein emerging from under a chair. He started talking about the game Hide and Seek.
Isn't it great when you find such a good hiding spot that they can't find you until the very end?
He said, sitting on the chair.
But sometimes, the best hiding spots can be the worst.
He continued. Then the episode began. 3 girls were sitting in a circle. One of them was telling a scary story.
Stop it, Amy! You're scaring me!
Shouted one of the girls.
Oh, grow up, Rachel. It's not real.
Mocked Amy.
Maybe we can do something else, Amy, said Emily. It's a sleepover, Emily. That's what you do. Tell scary stories. But seeing as you're too much of a scaredy cat, we'll play something else,
said Amy.
Let's play hide and seek,
exclaimed Rachel.
Not it,
shouted Emily.
Not it,
shouted Rachel.
Okay, I'll count to 60,
said Amy.
1, 2, 3...
Emily ran down the hall and hid in the cupboard. After waiting for a while, she checked her watch and called out,
Guys, have you given up yet?
She opened the doors and looked out. She was in a dark room. There was a small dude with a fucked up blurry face standing in front of her.
Welcome.
He said in a deep voice.
Who are you?
Asked Emily in a panicky voice.
Wait until my parents come home. They'll find me.
The man chuckled.
You humans humor me. Your parents hate you. You hate your parents.
No, I don't. I love them, and they love me.
Cried Emily.
Love is just a chemical reaction, made up to make us feel like living is worth something. We all hate each other. Feelings are made up to comfort us.
Emily crawled back into the cupboard crying. You could hear her banging on the back of the door. The man looked at the camera.
Your parents hate you too. Love is fake. You hate all of your so-called friends. No one cares about you. You don't care about anyone. There is no point living. We just like to pretend there is. You might as well just end it now. It's not as painful as you think.
It cut to Emily inside the cupboard. She opened the doors again. The man was still there. He was about to say something, but I stopped it before he did. I sat there for half an hour, staring at the stack. I went and had a shower. Probably drove the neighbors crazy seeing as it was midnight, but I didn't give a shit. I tried distracting myself by reading, but I couldn't make sense of the words. All I could hear were his words.
Nobody cares about me. I care about no one.
Nobody cares about me. I care about no one, I said to myself over and over. I tried going online. I browsed around some boards on 4chan, tried reading a few fanfics, but I couldn't get those words out of my head. I went on Facebook. All these friends messaging me, inviting to parties, posting pictures of me. They don't care about me. Feelings are made up to comfort us. Love is only a chemical reaction. I might as well end it now.